I sent it in the chat box, but before we start, if you guys will get at least 4 sheets of blank paper or a couple of index cards, and we're going to do something a little bit different. You guys do know it's Friday the 13th, right? I know. I can't believe I'm teaching the last lecture on, this is my last lecture, this is your last lecture on Friday the 13th. How in the world did that happen? All right, while we're waiting for people to click on, those of you that kind of tuned in minutes later, I put it in the chat box. If you can get um, 4 sheets of blank paper or a couple of index cards, I'm going to try to make this lecture a little bit easier for you guys. Since it's your last lecture and you only get like a week to study it. So all right. I have somebody down here with Cherie Wiggins' name on it, but it is not Cherie Wiggins. How did that happen?
Who is it?
Hi. All right.
That's Miss Wiggins' name.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
And there's another one with Miss Cherie Wiggins' name. There's 2, 3. Oh my God, this is Friday the 13th. I don't even know how to fix this. I don't think this has ever happened to me before. I didn't know you could do this. All right. Well, if you get marked absent, you might want to send her. I'm not doing the role. She is probably doing the role. So, I would definitely, if you are attending marked absent, you need to send either Miss Jean or Miss Wiggins an email and tell them you were here. I'm trying to see how many more. I've got like 4 Cherie Wiggins on here, and I know I didn't do this. All right. Look, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you guys. It looks like we've had a really good turnout for this very last lecture. It's your last lecture, it is my last lecture, and it is Friday the 13th. So thank you guys for attending. I'm going to try to make it. I know you guys are restless, you have a test, and you don't want to be doing this on your last Friday. So I'm going to try to make it as enjoyable as I can for you guys. If you have any questions, if you will email me, do not put them in the chat box because it's just too distracting when it comes up on our screen. So just email me or put it on the discussion board. All right. Well, this is healthcare systems policy, better known as bioterrorism and disaster. I'm not quite sure why I'm really teaching this semester because I think you guys have got this all under control. Y'all been doing this for the last 7, 8 months. So when I've taught this before, people have just kind of like just blurred it out and go, and now things have changed a little bit. If you would have told me I was telling you you were going to be, the whole nation would be locked down 8 months ago, y'all would have thought I was crazy. My last semester students talked about it and said, because I was telling them to stock up on supplies. When we went on lockdown, I got all these emails from students saying, oh my God, I wish we would have stockpiled on stuff because they were working and had no PPEs. All right. So in the SLOs, we've got some principles of emergency preparedness. We have 4 phases of emergency response. We have the role and responsibility of the nurse during this time. Triage, using the START triage system. The second part of this lecture is going to cover agents for bioterrorism, which will be anthrax, botulism, the plague, and smallpox. And also I have added radiation decontamination. That's the only thing we haven't really used in this lecture. However, I thought about it when Hurricane Laura hit and the chemical plants in Lake Charles had developed a leak. And right here where we live, we have quite a few nuclear plants. So that part is going to be discussed in the second half of this. So let's go back to disasters. In Louisiana, you've heard this over and over. You guys have lived here. You've exposed with hurricanes. You're probably the most prepared people in the U.S. for doing things. And I'm sure that you can get a couple of points. Those of you that had watched the news lately or in the last couple of months, you're probably going to get some extra points from Governor Edwards and President Trump for explaining some of these things to you, because you have heard this and you've actually now have seen it put into actual use. So let's go with an emergency. An emergency could be storms, your lights go out, a bad car accident, minor flooding. Definitions of emergency: disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, major flooding, pandemic. Pandemic is worldwide. Because previously we didn't have anything that was a pandemic. When I had some questions like this on the test, a lot of students missed it. I don't think anybody's going to miss a pandemic. You know now, with COVID, it is worldwide. It is a pandemic. You've heard it over and over and over. Surge capacity is another term you guys are now familiar with. And that's when the capacity to meet the needs of the community exceed what can be done. Example, the ICUs, the beds, they were full. We were at surge capacity. You've heard that over and over and over on the news. So let's go to emergency preparedness. And this is when you're making plans to respond to and recover from emergencies. We've all done this. We prepare down here, we get our food, we get our water, we get our canned goods, we start boarding up windows. Well, you have a role as a nurse, and that role of the nurse is you need to really follow your hospital policies on this. Most of you who do not work in a hospital, you will learn that when you go to work, you're going to have to sign a sheet of paper. Activation or recovery. Two different sets of teams for a disaster. I would suggest that those of you that have family, a lot of people to take care of, animals, pets, to do recovery. Those of you that have no obligations at home, you would probably be better doing activation. Activation is whenever they call the code gray or whatever, you have to come in and you will stay at the hospital until everything is back to normal, or what they call normal. You will then be allowed to go home and your recovery team will come in. If you sign this sheet of paper and you're on activation and you think, oh, I'm just going to sign it and I'll worry about it when a hurricane comes, if you do not show up, a lot of these hospitals will fire you. And I have seen it done. So take it very seriously and make your plans ahead of time of what you're going to do. If you are on activation, I suggest you get all your supplies. You need to be ready because you will have just enough time to go home. When we did the COVID thing in March, we had an hour to go back to school to pick up our stuff. An hour. So always be prepared. Have your stuff ready. Have it set up, your papers, whatever you need, ready to go. As you can see, things change daily. We saw the same thing with the hurricanes the last 2 or 3 months. It looks like weather is changing, so you need to get all this stuff together. And the CDC, we do all these disaster drills. There's a reason why we do them, so that you get prepared. Please take them serious and take notes, figure out what you need to do. Now, I have in there an ANA article. It is extensive. You do not, on your spare time, you can read everything in there. The takeaway point that I want you to know from all of that is you still have the same responsibilities as an RN. You still have the same ethic responsibility. You still have limitations on your skills. If it's not in your normal scope of practice, you cannot do it during a disaster. Even though it's a disaster. The other thing is you need to be aware that during disasters, some of the policies can change. You may not be charting every hour. You may be charting a couple of hours in between. You may not have the correct paperwork. That doesn't mean you can't do it. You're just going to have to adjust. Example. My daughter went to New York for the COVID crisis. She called me, and there were two things that she was in tears over. One was, what is going to happen to me if I don't change the tubing on my patients? We were taught in school and on the floor, she's a nurse, and to change the tubing. Remember how everybody's a stickler on those dates. Oh my God, if you don't have that little colored sticker on that thing. They were using the same tubing for weeks. She says, am I going to get in trouble for this? They had no supplies. They had to do what they could do at the time. Report. Going home, we've been taught you don't go home without giving a verbal report. They limited the contact between staff. They did a written report. They would write the report, cover just the basics, hand it to the charge nurse, and leave. And it was a really hard adjustment because when you're so conditioned to have to do these things this way, in an emergency, things can go to completely different. So I want you to be aware of that. Other things that could be different. You could have to get pulled to another floor. They can do that. They can put you somewhere else. But there's certain things that you can do on a floor that you have learned as a nurse. There's basic things that you can do. You can change dressings. You can give minor injections. You can do some wound care. You can do simple things as a nurse. If you're not used to doing a ventilator, then don't go work the ventilator. If you're not used to hanging cardiac drugs, you're probably not going to hang cardiac drugs. And the same thing goes for if you're the nurse, you're not going to assign someone to do this. You're not going to assign a labor and delivery nurse to hang other kinds of cardiac drugs. But she can do other things. So I want you to remember that. The other thing you need to remember with ANA is you have to follow the chain of command. You can't just go off and do what you want to do because it's a disaster. It's extremely important that you follow this chain of command. So let's talk about a couple of other things. during these disasters in A and A2, you can assign the family members to do some of the things. If you don't have time to give the injections during a major disaster, you can assign the family members to give the insulin, to give that. Think of it today, an easier way to think of it is, look how many pharmacists are giving flu shots. Look how many National Guard are out there testing for COVID. It is a disaster. Things can change. Last semester, students were able to start working before they had even taken their final because there was such a need for medical personnel. Lawyers did not have to take their boards. They could start practicing. So you still got to take all that, but just be sure that you're very well aware of your policies and your procedures. The other thing during disasters, we've been taught about HIPAA. If you got 300 people at the scene, you're going to probably have some problems as far as being extremely quiet about HIPAA. You've got to do what you can do at the time. So be sure that you have a plan for your families, a plan for you, what your employers expect of you. And the other thing that I was going to tell you is you're going to got to be aware ahead of time. And I want you guys to think about this. You're going to have some difficult decisions to make. And until you're in that situation, you're not going to know how you're going to react. So think about it before you go to work somewhere. Think about how you're going to feel in a situation where you're going to have to make a decision on if this person is going to live or die. Do I move on to the next person? Don't wait until you get a job and say, I'll deal with it when it comes. Put some thought into it before you go. The point with this is, I don't know if anybody watched this. I did tell my clinical students to watch it, and I would highly recommend that you guys stream this. And it was a very good episode of The Good Doctor the other night, on Monday night, and it was about the pandemic. And they portrayed the family opinion, the doctor's feelings, the nurse's feelings, everybody's feelings in there. And it was really very good. I would highly suggest you watch it. I don't think they could have written a better thing for nurses. I've seen several of the others. This one was very good. Like I said, we don't teach you in clinical how to make these life and death decisions. All of your patients are not dying at one time. So with that thought, the best way you're going to be able to fix that is to do some debriefing after these disasters. After you've been working and you've had a lot of people die, something bad happen, you need to figure it out, because otherwise you're going to start getting irritable. All right. We have a couple of organizations. And we have FEMA, which everybody knows FEMA. We have Homeland Security. Everybody has seen Homeland Security on TV for the last couple of months. The CDC, the Community Emergency Response Team. Does anyone in here have any idea? That's kind of a big term there. Emergency, it's called CERT. Anybody have any idea of an example of that team? You can unmute yourself if you know it.
Would be like the Cajun Navy.
Like the Cajun Navy. Thank you, V. Just like the Cajun Navy. And that goes under CERT. You have clinical outreach communication activities called COCA. Now, what I want you to do, because this seems to be so confusing for students, because it's a revolving clock, I've decided to do something a little bit different with you guys. I want everybody to take their sheet of paper. If you have plenty of paper, you can do one per sheet. If you only have the 4 sheets of paper, then divide it in half. All right, you guys ready? Everybody ready? I cannot draw. So instead of putting you guys in breakout rooms, because it is Friday the 13th, and I actually feel sorry for y'all because it's your last clinical day, and I know I have like very few brain cells sitting in front of me. We're gonna do this a little bit different. So on your top of your page, this is gonna be 4 phases of an emergency. On the top of your page, I want you to put number 1, mitigation. Okay, you don't have to write this down unless you can write it in really short notes, but mitigation takes place before and after an emergency occurs. It consists of identifying potential hazards and taking action to reduce the likelihood of their occurrences and minimize the effects of those that cannot be prevented. So, with all that being said, we're going to break that down in an easy way for you. You can draw this any way you want to draw this. This is how I did this. Instead of just putting it on a PowerPoint and listing it, instead of just putting you in groups to do this, one of the things in mitigation, according to that definition, that we do is everybody down here buys flood insurance, right? Or you hope that they buy flood insurance. So what you might want to do is draw you a little picture and put flood insurance. A piece of paper, you can put an arrow out to the side, whatever your artistic abilities are. The second thing that you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to have generators. You want to be prepared. Like I said, my artistic abilities are not good. Some of you guys can probably draw better generators than I can. We're going to be buying all that, hopefully. The other thing you're gonna do is I drew a house. Oops, a house, and that's gonna be creation of storm basements, shelters. And the last one I did is gonna be warning signs for tornadoes or storms. That's my tornado, sorry. Okay? It's gonna be public warning systems. When we had the Hard Rock collapse and the fire chief was on there, I can honestly say for the first time I heard on TV, we are in the mitigation phase right now, is what the fire chief said. And I remember calling Miss Wiggins and saying, now how many lay people out there do you know what the mitigation phase is? Just like now we say PPE and pandemic, everybody knows that. But at that time, mitigation phase, are you kidding me? Well, if you start listening now to things going on, you're gonna be aware of mitigation, okay? It revolves. The second phase is gonna be your preparedness phase. Take your second sheet of paper or your second square and put number 2, preparedness phase. What does that mean? This is where you're gonna assess your risk and you're gonna make plans to be sure you address those risks. Instance, in the mitigation phase, we had the generator, right? Well, now you're gonna put on there, check the generators. You wanna be sure that they're working. Doesn't do you any good to have one if it doesn't work. The second thing you're gonna check is your equipment. That's my fire extinguisher or flashlight. You wanna be sure that it works. After it's been sitting for a year, they sometimes don't work. The battery, check your batteries. Make sure your batteries are working. Remember, preparedness phase. Then, my little house again for creation of your shelters. Be sure you've got a plan in your house of where to go and make sure you can get in that storm shelter. That it's not blocked with a whole bunch of storage stuff is an easier way. Policies. That's my little sheet of paper with writing on it. Make sure you know what your proper policies are and what you're gonna have to do. Now would be the time to know that you're on the recovery team. You better have your bags packed. Then the last one is all my little peoples, my little stick people. And this is where FEMA, Homeland, CDC, and everybody gets involved. Okay, this is the preparedness, National Guard, all of that. Easy peasy, right? Let's go to the third phase. The third phase is the emergency response. And for an emergency response, that's gonna be where you're acting out this preparedness plans. You're implementing it. You're providing a means for responders to save lives. You're preventing additional property damage. You're meeting basic human needs. So, look at my little people. You could draw little people. Search and rescue. Cajun Navy's coming in now. Coast Guard's coming in now. My little people that are triage. This is when you're going to enact triage. I've got little people. One is green, one is yellow. You could do another one that's black and another one that's red. This is when you enact your triage. The last one, if you notice, is a little stick man with only one leg. And this is when you meet his basic human needs. This is when we're at the doing the best thing we can do for people at this time, meeting basic human needs. Restoring the electricity, trying to get those utility poles. All the energy trucks coming in. Trying to figure out where to send people to. So, since we've done all that, the last one is number 4 is the recovery phase. And that phase basically is to put that community back to normal and or create new safer normals. After each disaster, we've learned some new things, and they're all different. This is when you're going to have that's my utility pole, sorry, my electric pole. So you can draw your electric pole any way you want. And that's going to be repair and rebuild equipment. The next thing is medicines. We're going to make sure we have a storage of medicines. What are we doing right now? We are trying to make all these medicines, as many medicines as we can. Smallpox. There's enough smallpox vaccines at the CDC to vaccinate everybody in the U.S. This is when we're going to start storing food again and other essential items. By now, I'm sure everybody has a mask, a box of paper mask at home. At the first phase, you probably didn't have mask. The next one is home confinement. Now, I drew a little house, home confinement. And this is where you have to think about in the recovery phase, like the people in Lake Charles with Hurricane Laura. A lot of these people are just staying in their homes that are gutted. Some people have no electricity. A lot of things can happen in the recovery phase. An example, my brother lives in Lake Charles. He lost electricity for a month. He finally got his electricity back. Talked to him last night. His brand new air conditioner is out. The computer burned up, and it was related to running on a generator. So he's back again with no electricity. So you're going to have a lot of people back in home confinement, living in a way that they didn't live before. You're going to have quarantine with COVID right now. These people are at home. They're recovering, but they're on home confinement. See my little houses again? We have neighborhood clinics now. We have new places going up. We needed to put more things in. What are they discussing in the news? More COVID testing sites. More people trained to do that. The very last one is all my little stick people. And this is reemployment. This is when people, like we were on lockdown, now we're gradually getting back where people can go to work. You were gradually able to go back to clinical. So I hope that kind of helps you a little bit with the phases. And when the news comes on, you're going to understand those phases. All right, now we're moving on to the next thing. And to make that one simple too, I'm gonna cover this just before we go on break. Try not to make this too complicated. It's called the START. And what START stands for is simple triage and rapid treatment. Exactly that, simple. So take your other sheets of paper, you could divide it into fourths, or you could divide it into 4 sheets, however much paper you have, and put red for the first one at the top, yellow for the second one, green for the third one, and black. All right. What we're doing now is basically what we call reverse triage. This is what you do during disasters. Remember, I said things change a lot in disasters. We have been drilling you guys for the last couple of years. Which patient do you go see first? In the ER. You could be sitting in there for hours, right? Because everybody that comes in trumps you if they have something worse. So we're going to use the 4 colors. If you Google on your spare time, if you have any spare time, Google triage, you will find all different types of triage. Some will just be cut in half. Will die, will not die, and divide them into 2. But we're going to use these 4 colors. And an easy way to think about that is if you think of a red light, a traffic light. Green means to go. Yellow means, maybe I can go, maybe I can't go. Do I take that chance and get a ticket or not? Got to kind of decide. It's iffy. You got only a few seconds in there. Red means you had better stop. That is a warning. Stop. If you do not stop, you're going to be getting that black sign, which is going to be a ticket because you did not stop. So really basically what that means is under your green, let's pull out your green sheet first. And green is going to be, you can draw this however you want. Green is going to be minor. Okay? This means that term that you've heard before, the walking wounded. If you can walk, you are green. Period. These are people that could actually probably go days without being seen if you had a mass casualty. Yellow is going to be, they can be delayed. They can wait a couple of hours. What are we going to put in delayed? Sprained ankles, broken bones, moderate burns, You can have multiple fractures. You can have a spinal cord injury. Let's move to red. Red. Basically, these are got to be people that have to be seen immediately. They have to be seen within an hour, is kind of your guideline. So, how are we going to distinguish red from yellow? Let's take our other example. Yellow, we had a broken bone, right? How do we make that broken bone a red? If it is an open fracture, it is an extremity, whether it's a leg, whether it's an arm, if it is an open fracture, you stand up, if you've ever seen these, they are horrible looking. These are, you have a high chance of infection. If you have the small broken bone, you may have some other issues, but you hear all the time where mountain climbers have been sitting on the mountain with broken bones. All right, our very last one is black. And that means they have either expired or they're just not going to survive. And an easy way, another way that you're going to do that. Oh, why am I echoing? Okay. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I don't know why it echoed for a second. I thought maybe I hit something. When you come up on these seams, I'm going to show you, I have a couple of tags, triage tags, and if we were in class, I'd pass it around. And it's basically, you see the little hole that they'll put the string and put it around their neck, and the different colors, they're going to label them on that. But on the back of it, you're going to see some other things. And you're going to see what we call, I don't know if it's showing backwards or not, but it'll say RPM. And all of these are different no matter where you work. They're going to have different tags. And a way, this is for your vital signs, how you're going to distinguish who's going to be red, who's going to be yellow, who's going to be green. If you think about in your car, the gauge that says RPMs, if you put your foot on the gas, it goes faster. Your RPMs are going to go up. Same thing with this. Your R is going to stand for respirations. Over 30 is going to be a red. So back on your little red sign, you're going to put R over respirations, over 30. So if my respirations are 31, I am going to be red. Pulse. No radial pulse. No radial pulse. That's going to be red. It is an extremity. If you do not have a pulse in an extremity, it is red. You don't want to lose your arms or legs. And the M stands for mental status. Unable to follow any simple commands. That is going to be in your red too. In your green, like I said, the walking wounded. If you have an X in your head and you can walk, you're still green. The black one, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If they have no respirations, you know they're dead, you're going to put them as black. If you come up on a person and he looks like he's having difficulty breathing, he's unconscious, all you're going to do is do a head tilt on him. If you do a head tilt and he does not respond or regain his breathing, he is going to be black. Okay? That is all you're to do. Sometimes just repositioning someone's head can turn them back into being red. Okay? If he has injuries that there is no way that he's going to make it, if you come up on a severe bus accident and someone is hanging out the window and half of their body is out the window, the other half is in, and they are literally cut in half, you know that they're never going to survive this. Or even though they can still talk to you for those few minutes, they're going to be labeled black. You're not going to stop what you're doing, saving other people. You're going to mark this person black, and you're going to go back to all the other people you can save. Especially if you can save one that all you got to do is do a head tilt. It is going to be a very hard decision if you have to make this. Yellow, on your yellow one, you can just put delayed. They're not walking, they can go into delayed. Now, a little bit of something else I want you to think about. You got to remember, this is a mass casualty. You've got smells going on, you've got noise going on, you got people screaming. You have lots of people to do stuff and figure out where they're going to go. If you come upon an accident and there's only 4 people at that accident, and you have one that's walking, one that is obviously not doing anything, and you have another one that's having difficulty breathing, and you have another one that just has, let's say, a cut to the leg and a dressing on it, but it's no longer bleeding. Which person are we going to go to first? Are we going to go to that green person first? Or are we going to go to that person that's having the breathing difficulty? I see everybody shaking their head. Right. We're going to go real quick to that breathing person, that airway issue. Remember, anything with airway. But you've got just a second, reposition his head. Are you going to start CPR on him? No. No CPR. No CPR. Period, period, period. At disaster scenes. Unless you've triaged everybody and that's your very last patient. But then you could do your CPR. The object of all of this triaging is to do the best you can do for the most amount of people. You don't want to waste your equipment and only be able to save 10 people when you could probably save 100 people. Does everybody understand that principle? Okay? That's what's more important to do than anything else. What they will see sometimes at these disaster scenes, they will have mats in those 4 colors. And people could only follow simple directions at this time. So if the person is walking around, you could tell him, go to that green mat. If they have a wound, a broken leg, not open, get someone to carry him over to the yellow mat. The red one, open fractures, open bones, exposed stuff. Take them over to the red mat. The black ones, the deceased, are going to go to the black thing. When the ambulance, when the EMS people start coming in that are loading up people, they're going to go to that red first. And those are the people that they're going to start taking to the hospital. When they had the shooting in Vegas, they loaded up the red people and just threw them in pickup trucks. Problem you're going to have is not only are you going to be sending these green people to those green mats, you're going to have all these green walking people that haven't been triaged flooding your ER. And they're going to, what do people do? They're going to go to the closest ER. When you're at the ER, you're going to go back to your basic triage, okay? Let me see. It's, oops, just in time for y'all to take a 10-minute break. Take your 10-minute break. Basically, that's what I want you to know. If you look at your 4 colors on your 4 sheets, or however you divided it up into those colors, and just remember it very simple. If you start reading a whole bunch of the different things, they even have 5 colors and more colors, but this is kind of the universal that most people around the world know to do. So if you went to Europe and they told you, go see those people on the red mat, you know, these people are serious. They're probably, you know, they've got some issues. All right. Go take your break. We will be back at 9:35. Okay, can y'all hear me? Yes? All right. Just checking. All right, this one is going to be on bioterrorism. I do want to go back real quick and go over one thing just to clarify this for you guys. Under your yellow piece of paper, in order to decide if they're yellow or red, look at their respirations. Be sure you check their respirations and be sure you check their pulse. If they do not have a pulse, they are red.
You mean, Ms. Dickerson, if they don't have a radial pulse? If they don't have a pulse at all, they
Right. I just assumed, I'm sorry, I assumed that if they had no carotid pulse or whatever, you guys know that they're black. But, right, thanks for making that a little bit clearer. I just want to be sure that you guys understand that. Okay? What we're
Miss
looking for is,
Dickerson,
yes,
if they have a pedal pulse but they can walk.
they are, if they can walk, you just said it, they can walk.
Okay. Okay.
You said to check their respirations. Is there a number that we need to?
If they're over, you go back to your RPMs. If their respirations are over 30, they are red. So if their respirations are 31, 32, 33, 34, they are red. If their respirations are 29, you can make them yellow. All right. All right, let's get to the one thing that hopefully you guys never see, and that's bioterrorism. And the definition of bioterrorism is basically the intended use or the threatened use of weapons against individuals to create fear or to cause human deaths or illness, for the purpose of 1, interruption of normal activities, 2, intimidation, and 3, gaining military advantage. So, what we're gonna do is, instead of putting you guys in breakout rooms and each group has to do something, we're gonna do it all together as a project. I want you to take your other 4 sheets of paper or your 4 pieces, and I want you to label 1, anthrax, the second one, botulism, the third one, plague, and the 4th one, smallpox. So, let's start with the first one, anthrax. We've all seen the things on anthrax where they are worried about the envelopes, coming out with the envelopes and the powder and stuff. So it's spread respiratory, and that's a man-made, okay? Anthrax also is a mineral, a coal that comes from the ground. And in Louisiana, well, really everywhere, if you have a large farm animal, a horse, a cow, something big dies, you have to bury it so many feet or have it burned because it can carry this disease. So, under your anthrax, I want you to do this. You can draw, and you can draw your little animal, whether he's going to be whatever. and I've got cows, sheep, and I have a flask that it can be man-made. My little squiggly line means that's the ground, and you can get it through the ground. So in some places, they can't put livestock in a lot of that. Well, this animal can actually pass it to this human being, my stick man. And if you notice, I drew a mask over to the side. What I want you to do is put on that same thing for anthrax. It starts out as a skin ulcer, and it has a black center. If you look at his arm, he has a black thing, and that's why they got it anthracite, because it comes from a mineral. You're going to see this on his arm. Symptoms, flu-like symptoms. How can we get it? We can get it through those animals, through the air. We need a mask. Who's the person that is likely to be getting anthrax? Well, if it comes from the animal, it could be anybody that's working with livestock. Farmers, herders, veterinarians, those kind of people. They do have a vaccine for veterinarians. All right. So now you remember what it looked like. It's got that black mark, and it comes from animals. The second thing we're going to, thing that they could use for bioterrorism is botulism. And actually, under botulism, I've got a couple little pictures. And I've got corn, which is food, a water bottle, and a person. It could be man-made. The way that it can affect you, if you look at my little stick man, he's got to get double vision, slurred speech, and it's going to move down. And then he's got to get paralysis of his legs, his lungs. What happens when you get paralysis in your lungs? Worst case scenario is you go on a vent. And then in the very corner of the thing, I put a baby less than 2, no honey, because botulism can be found in the honey. What I want you to think about with the botulism is years and years ago, I mean like long time ago, back in the Romans, they did this, they contaminated the water. There was another thing in Russia where they contaminated the food. So we're all at risk of that. If something like that happens, we're going to have to be watching our food, our canned foods, our water, everything. How are we going to treat it? Only with supportive care. There's some antitoxins that the CDC has, but you have to do sensitivity test first. So remember the botulism as same thing as Botox, where it paralyzes the muscles. If it gets bad enough, these people are gonna have, their lungs are gonna get paralyzed. They can't breathe. They're gonna go on a vent. The third one is the plague on your third square. And I drew a little up here. Let's see. Up here is my little rat. And they come, they get it from the rats. The rat bites the person. They wind up with swollen lymph glands, and they're extremely obvious. If you look at them, you can see them. They are extremely swollen. So if you have swollen lymph glands, you're going to have pain with this, lots of pain with this. Another thing you're going to be aware of is if you've got swollen lymph glands, then you could develop fever, headache, and where can that lead you to? A vent and death. You could get septic. Okay? We know that's the worst case scenario. They have fever, headache, chills, weakness. What are we going to do with these people? Supportive care. We're going to treat their fever with some meds. We're going to treat their, if they need some fluids, they, like I said, they can go into shock. They can go into DIC after that. And then the worst case scenario is they're going to die. Treatment of choice is streptomycin, 1 gram IM BID times 10 days. So, let's go to smallpox. All right. Here is a picture of smallpox. Nasty looking stuff, right? And it's all over the body. So just by remembering the spots, it's something I would not want. It looks extremely painful too. So, with smallpox, you're going to have all these dots all over your little man. And if you notice, I have him in a house. He is in isolation. That's my isolation, okay? You don't want to catch this. He's going to have anxiety, fever. He's going to need liquids to treat that fever, fluids, right? His tongue is going to have red spots on it. And this, of course, is my nurse out here, and she's completely dressed out in gear, PPE and mask. You don't want to catch this, period. It can be fatal. It's highly contagious. It enters through the mucosa. Russia and the US are the only two countries that have storage of smallpox. The good thing is, supposedly, there is enough of this in the strategic stockpile, and everybody now knows. I used to have to go into what the strategic stockpile is, but I don't think I need to do that anymore. We have enough in there to treat every American. These people are going to have these horrible lesions, flu-like symptoms. PPEs, okay?
Miss Dickerson, what does it say under fever? There's like something written on the line.
Oh, liquids.
Liquids. Okay.
Treat them with fluids.
Thank you.
Fluids. So, I mean, you can imagine how anxious you're going to be if you've got all that stuff on it. So you're going to need something for anxiety. You're going to need something for fluids because they've got all these things on their mouth too. And it is fatal. So the only reason I did these like this is for those of you that need pictures. I figured at least maybe you can memorize the pictures, if anything else, rather than just a list of stuff, because it all just kind of sounds familiar if you do it that way. All right, now we're going to move real quick to radiation. And basically, what I want you to know out of radiation is how to treat yourself, keep yourself safe, and keep your patients safe. Starting off, if you have a nuclear attack, do not do what the people in Chernobyl did. They ran to the top of the bridge and they watched the burning of the nuclear reactors. Bad choice. All those people that went to the bridge died. You need to stay away from windows. Period. Do not stay in a room that has windows. You need to stay inside for at least 12 to 24 hours minimum. Listen to your radio. They will tell you when you need to come out. You're going to need N95s. You're going to have the regular PPEs, gloves, boots, eyes. And we're going to add one more thing to that called a dosimeter. And the dosimeters are going to be something that you carry that will register how much radiation. If you remember, in March, or let's say May, when we were getting things ready for hurricanes, I would bet my bottom dollar that most of you guys did not have PPEs in your emergency kits. But now, don't laugh at me when I tell you you need a dosimeter in your emergency kits now. Just in the event something like this. Hopefully it never happens, but it doesn't have to be a war thing. It could have been the same thing. Like I said, in Lake Charles, when the hurricane hit, it set off one of the chemical plants, and it put off this really bad black smoke. What did you see on Facebook? Everybody outside taking pictures of it. Do not do that. Stay inside your house. Okay. Let's say you get some of this stuff on you. You're going to have to get decontaminated. How can you decontaminate someone? If you take off your clothes, including socks and shoes, you will remove 90% of the decontamination. 90%. What if that's the only set of clothes you have? You can take them off, shake them off, and put them back on. You got 90% of the stuff off. If you have a choice and you have your clothing in a drawer, this happens at home, you can take your clothing that's in the drawer and put it on. If you go to the hospital they're going to decontaminate you. If you're working there, you really want to do one person at a time. You want to kind of respect their privacy the best that you can. All of their personal belongings, their necklaces, their watches, their phones, get bagged in a bag with their clothing. What you're going to write on that bag is the date and the time. The time is really important. They need to know how long that radioactive stuff has been in that bag. So not only do you label it with their name, put the date and time. When you're washing off these people, you need to have the water run downhill. Therefore, you don't want to be standing downhill, okay? In the disaster bags that they have at the hospital, they have these bags that actually catch the runoff water because the runoff water is contaminated. So if you're out in a field, don't put that person on the highest point and wash them off with the water and you got all your friends at the bottom of the hill, okay? The other thing is when you're giving these people this bath, washing them down, you include their head, their hair. The radioactive stuff goes into your hair. So you do not scrub their hair. You gently put the soap in there. The other interesting thing is be sure you do not use a hair conditioner. Oh, I see most of y'all have long hair. Do not put a hair conditioner in. Why do you not use hair conditioner? Because it smooths the strand of the hair and it keeps the radioactive particles in your hair. So be sure that you do not do that. You're going to wash them down. If they have any open wounds, you're going to cover those with waterproof dressings. Why? Because when you're washing them down, you don't want to wash the particles into their open wounds. Make sense? All right. The other thing is, do not scrub their skin. This is not the time when you got to scrub someone down to like you're washing your hands underneath the sink for 20 minutes to get the germs off. You do not want to force those particles into their skin. Make sure you wash the bottom of their feet too. If they have some foreign objects in their body, something is stuck in there, because you got to remember some of these explosions, there are people around, and it's not just air stuff, it could be trauma stuff. If they've got something stuck in them, you can use forceps to take it out or a water pick. Do not touch it with your hands. What kind of temperature are we going to use when we wash these people down? Are we going to use cold water? What happens when the guys probably don't know this, but all you girls know this? Why do we wash and rinse our hair with cold water?
It keeps the moisture in.
And it seals the cuticle, right? Same thing, we don't want to use the conditioner. You don't want to seal that cuticle. You want those particles to get out. So you don't want to use cold water. The opposite on that too is you don't want to use hot water because that'll make it absorb faster. So be kind of nice to your patient and wash them with just some lukewarm tepid water, okay? What I wanted to tell you is for the strategic stockpile, they are set up all over the United States, and they are set up to get to any population within 12 hours. A lot of stuff can happen in 12 hours, but you can get it in 12 hours. The treatment, and you couldn't find any of this in March either, because I was trying to find it and I couldn't get it, is potassium iodide tablets. Those, if you take them within 4 hours, it can prevent thyroid cancer from the radiation. If it's been longer than 12 hours, it's useless. I don't know if you could still find them. I actually haven't looked in a while, but it's going to be my next thing to put on my list. Those of you, when you get a chance, look at the HBO series Chernobyl. And when this happened a few years ago, we, of course, probably most of y'all down here, nobody paid any attention to it. But the air traveled from all the way from there to England. It also, California was checking their boats coming in and checking all the food for radioactive particles. So just because it happens over in one area doesn't mean that it can't float all over. So stay a little bit more in tuned to this. Think about this when we have hurricanes, especially those that are getting so bad these days. And look at where the nuclear reactors are in your area. The people in Chernobyl, when it went off, it leaked and it burned for a while. It still is not sealed off. They cannot get the workers in there. They've still been trying to seal it. Nothing has grown there since. Everything that has been there, the animals, a certain group of people have come back, and they all have genetic issues. You have to have special permission, and usually you got to be a scientist to be able to go in there. You have to wear a dosimeter, and you only have a certain amount of time to stay in there, like a half an hour, whatever. Everything, all these people left their stuff, and it's still sitting the same way they left it. Plates on the table, everything. And all of it is still radioactive. So, but if you get a chance, watch the HBO series. It's really very good. And I wanted you to think about a couple things with it. 95% of the people, 95% died within a half a mile of it. The rest of them died a whole lot later. Hair started falling out, and the show kind of goes a little bit more into symptoms, so it's a little easier, but I'm not testing you on all that. Just for your info, that if that happens and a hospital is close by, just like what happened here, it wiped out something like 2,000 nurses in one shot with all the doctors. So just think about it. The other thing that I wanted to tell you is, as a healthcare worker, you run a really big, you're at risk for a traumatic event You can be exposed to dead bodies, dead parts, body parts, severely injured adults, children, friends. And you've got to take care of your own emotional and physical health first. And that recovery could take days, it could take weeks, it could take months. Some ideas for this would be some frequent rest breaks if you can get it, even if you only do it for 2 minutes. Watch out for everybody. Be very conscious of the people that are around you. Try to keep a normal schedule. Think about what it is that you really can't change. Let yourself feel bad. You are in a bad situation. Communicate with your families. Do what we call critical stress debriefings. They're really important. And you know, when you read when you're writing all these things down, it's yeah, I know, I've heard all that before. But it's really, if any of you have watched TV in this last week, they are extremely focused on this. I wasn't even thinking near as bad till I started seeing everything, and everything you turn on, all these people are depressed. And because it has dragged into a long thing with COVID. But you can have this with nuclear disasters. You can have this with hurricanes. It applies to all of it. Just want you to be aware of it. And like I said, on The Good Doctor, it brings these things out. So be sure you have these debriefings. Make sure, let me think of what else I wanted to tell you. For smallpox, you got to have your PPEs. During disasters, you could teach the families to give medications. Remember, airway is always important. If you have no carotid, let me go back over that. No carotid pulse, they are black. No radial pulse, and they're breathing, they are red. Walking wounded are green. If you can ambulate, you are green. If you are confused, going back to like mental status, those of you, let's take something that you know something about. Test taking. After you take your test, if you were taking it at school and I was in the hallway and you were coming out and you're going, like a lot of students, oh my God, that was terrible. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? Whereas if you come out of that test and I say, Samantha, how'd the test go? And you just start walking down the hall and you just go, what test? Didn't take a test. Don't know. Don't know the date. Samantha, what's today's date? Don't know. Where are you, Samantha? I don't know. Do you get the difference? Understand the difference on mental? All right. Kind of like the same thing with Alzheimer's and dementia. For refrigerator, you know what the refrigerator is? If you don't know what the refrigerator is, that it stores food, then you have a bigger problem. So keep that in mind for mental stuff. Just because you're stressed out Just because you're hyperventilating after a test, not gonna worry about you. But if you come out and you're in a state of shock, we have a problem. So, all right, I think that that's just about it. I don't wanna, hopefully your little pictures will help you studying. Maybe it won't be near as boring to look at your pictures, and hopefully you can draw better than I can draw. And I want to thank you guys for coming in here on a Friday and doing this. I appreciate it. I wish you the best of luck on your test next week. If you have any questions, email me and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And I'll
Use the discussion board too,
right.
because that way everybody can see, because if you have a question, other people do too, probably.
Definitely put it on the discussion board. And I just answered a question on the discussion board for someone the other night. So y'all may want to look at that. I know some people are not using the discussion board. I highly suggest you look at the discussion board. All right, y'all have a good weekend. And thank you again for coming. Let the Friday 13th not be a bad thing.